I'd like to call this meeting to order, and before we begin, happy birthday to Councillor Jackie Curry, turning 39 years old today.
So can we sing happy birthday?
No.
Bumps later.
All right, can we get a motion, please, that the agenda for the April 2nd, 2019 regular meeting of council be adopted with the addition of sundry item I-1 landfill reclamation funding?
Birthday girl meeting.
Councillor Curry will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that the minutes of the March 19th, 2019 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented?
Do that one.
Councillor Chouinard will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. We have a public hearing tonight regarding proposed bylaw, road closure bylaw number 2227. And we have Ms. DeChambeau who will walk us through what this road closure is about. Go ahead, Ms. DeChambeau.
Thank you, Your Worship. The road closure was, we had a citizen approach us at the end of summer last year that lives adjacent to the little portion that we're looking at closing, and they were interested in purchasing it at that time. So we sent out our notifications, and then in October we had first reading, and it went to the minister, got approval. And now we have been notified that they are no longer interested in purchasing it. But the planning department is still recommending that we move forward with the closure, because if you look at the little piece, if you were to drive down there, you would wind up in the creek, I think, on the other side. So you don't have to go through with the road closure bylaw. If you just left it now for 2 years after first reading, it would time out and it wouldn't be first reading anymore. You could rescind first reading and or make amendments, but we think we should just go ahead and do second and third reading. We haven't had anyone phone, we haven't had any letters of objection or comments, and we can then, in the future, we could sell it to an adjacent landowner or join it onto our land on the reserve there. So that's where we're at right now, is the public hearing prior to the second and third reading.
All right, thank you. And anybody here to speak to this matter, for or against? We'll just give it another 30 seconds, due process. All right, well, I will close the public hearing for that matter. Thank you very much, Ms. DeChambeau. We'll move on to reading of bylaws. Can I get a motion, please, that council give second reading to bylaw number 2227 to close a portion of road right-of-way legally described as Plan 4200 MC, Block 151, all of land within Block 151, and Councillor Sorensen will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council give third reading to bylaw number 2227? Councillor Byer will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council direct administration to replenish the 2019 unrestricted surplus account by reallocating the following reserve funds to such account: the $400,000 set aside in the operating cultural reserve for the Yellowhead Agricultural Society, and the $318,000 set aside in infrastructure reserve for water well exploration in 2019. Councillor Bevan will make that motion, and we have Ms. Bittner joining us now, who is our acting director of financial corporate services. Correct? Is that the title? Almost. Go ahead, Ms. Bittner.
I believe that this was brought to the committee last week. I was on holiday then, so I didn't attend. This is just a continuation of the where we had to fund the grant deficit, if you like, for the wastewater treatment plant from our unrestricted surplus, just leaving it a little low for administration to feel comfortable. So we just recommended just bringing a little bit of those monies over to the unrestricted surplus for 2019.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bittner. Councillor Chenard.
Okay, just one question on this sewer lagoon. It was 1.9. Now, when we put this 2 million, it's paid for now. There's no more surprises coming, because I know this is no one's fault. The grant didn't show up, but will it be paid in full now?
The expenses were already paid. They've been paid
Okay.
to the contractor, a while ago. This was just the funding of that from
Correct.
the province. We had used monies in our bank for
Yes.
this, expecting to get that 1.9 from the province. So it's not that we have to pay the 2 million. That's already been paid. Not receiving that grant just brought our unrestricted surplus down by that amount. We had just over $2 million in there. We've ended up with around the general $500,000 surplus for 2019, just looking at 2019 on its own. So that obviously goes back into that. But we've taken some money out as well for 19 to pay for Bench Creek. So with all of those things going up and down, left us with about 100,000 in that unrestricted surplus. So just putting these back in will just raise that up to just a little bit more of a comfortable level.
Go ahead, Mr. Verhage.
And Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Chouinard, just to make sure that transparency, so you understand
Yes.
the process. For the construction that's covered under the capital construction for the wastewater treatment plant, this does deal with all of the costs as mentioned. However, there are some compliance costs with our approval through environment, which will come forward in 2020. But those will mainly be dealing with the items that come through our environmental approvals, such as some monitoring wells and items like that, but they're relatively small by comparison, of course.
All right, thank you, Councillor Chenard. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Bennett.
No, I like where we're going here, and if I remember right from previous council, sorry to the chair, so with that, you can slap me afterwards. I remember with previous council, we talked about this, we were supposed to get a bigger chunk of money from the government, and they cut us back on a percentage. So we wouldn't have been in this kind of a spot here from before, and that's why we're kind of like this right now. So we got a lower amount from before, but I like where we're going with this. I think it's the right way of working it, so I have no problem.
All right, thank you, Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair to Mr. Verhage, when you talk about these compliance costs, I'm sorry, can you just explain that to me a bit more, what you mean by that?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Wilkinson, and definitely we can provide probably a more up-to-date or complete representation of that to you in the near future. But part of the license which was issued to us in November, so post-budget, which is now coming into play effective April 1st, we have to provide them with a plan for remediation of certain cells within the old lagoon. So there's still remediation work from our older facility. We've been working with environment to make sure that we're either repurposing or minimizing the costs or the remediation requirements for those cells. And that plan is already commissioned and should be provided to us within the month for us to negotiate with Alberta Environment. But that remediation plan will also deal with things such as making sure we address appropriate monitoring wells for the area and address any other items that the province still requires to meet the general requirements for wastewater treatment plants. So they aren't related to the construction of the facility, but rather towards the management and continuous environmental monitoring around that facility.
Through the chair,
Go
can I
ahead,
just ask
Councillor
another
Whitmore.
question? Do you have a ballpark figure for that? And the next question then is, does the government kick in any of this money that they ask us to comply with? Or what is that charge going to be to us, tentatively?
Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Wilkinson, as I mentioned, probably the best way for me to provide that back to you is a complete report, which I can do so once that report's filed with us, so that we have a full reckoning of what those might be.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Byer.
Through the chair to Mr. Verhage, I know Council was already provided with an update regarding the Yellowhead Egg Society, but could you just give a public update?
Mr. Verhage.
Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Baer, I'm afraid that I wasn't briefed on exactly what the outcomes were from the Agricultural Society. My understanding is that that information has not been provided to me. So
I can speak to it if you. We have been in contact with the Yellowhead Egg Society. Unfortunately, due to conflicting schedules, administration was not able to meet with them, but they are aware that this is what we're doing. We are going to be moving the funds, and that we will relook at that project when they're ready to go. So they're aware of that, and the administration has offered to meet with them at any time in the future if they wish to discuss the project further.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chenard.
The only thing I don't like about it is the water exploration, where we're taking out almost 400,000. So if we choose to do that later, would there be funds? Because the well exploration is very important in town of Edson, because we work off water wells. So I'm not too keen on that. I understand why, but I'm not keen on the idea that we're taking 400,000 out of our water well exploration, which is very important to this town.
Through the chair to Councillor Chenard. With the unrestricted surplus, this isn't money that we're taking and spending immediately and it's going to disappear. It's money that's going into the unrestricted surplus just for a buffer in case anything else happens. So these, as we go through the years, if we don't use the unrestricted surplus, this will continue to grow, and at that point we can look at reallocating to different areas.
Right, thank you, Ms. Bittner. And just to clarify, it's $318,000 for water well exploration. So, all right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? I'll just speak to this quickly. I agree with how we're moving forward with this. The fact remains that when it comes to water well exploration, there's some years we budget for it and we don't do it. Councils in the past have been very diligent in doing that work. So skipping a year I don't think is going to make a huge difference, as well as administration has indicated that they're re-looking on how we're addressing our water needs in our community, and we'll have some further information down the road. And as for the $400,000 for the Egg Society, certainly a project that we see some value in, but at this time we need these funds for possible emerging issues. So happy if they come back to us and provide us an update at a future time. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council reschedule the April 16th, 2019 regular meeting as follows: Thursday, April 18th, 2019, 9:50 a.m. at Holy Redeemer School in Edson, Alberta. Councillor Byer will make that motion, and as representative on the Youth Council, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So as per our policy, it says that we need to host a council meeting at each of the schools, and HRH was able to provide the first location, and this will likely be the only one that we'll do this term due to starting the Youth Council at such a late time in the year. So next year I think maybe we'll book them a little earlier in advance, and then it'll be easy to schedule. So that's it. I believe administration is working on the technical aspect.
All right, any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Chouinard?
Okay, so if we did HRH, so then probably, I believe the other in school is just HRH and Parkland. So
And
Parkland
Pine Grove.
and Pine Grove, so those schools should get priority starting next fall then? Because I would look forward to rotating through all three
Yeah.
schools are involved.
Absolutely.
All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council call a special meeting of council on April 16th, 2019, commencing at 5 p.m. in council chambers to host a delegation medically at-risk drivers. Councillor Bevan will make that motion. And Mr. Verhage, do you want to speak to this? I don't know if we really need any other details on what's in the memo.
Mr. Chairman, no. Again, as noted within the memo, the time would actually be, it says that you are planning a regular council meeting as follows at 9:50 a.m. at Holy Redeemer, and the additional meeting as proposed within the report is required to look at the additional information provided by that group. Unless there's questions by council, I have nothing to add.
Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this here, through the chair. Is this not something maybe that, if they come back to us again and do another presentation later on, that maybe the schools would like to listen to this too, as there are students that are going out there somewhere graduating and stuff like this and that? Is this something that would benefit them to hear the presentation on?
I believe this group is coming in from Edmonton, and they're meeting with county earlier in the day, so they want to hit both.
Yeah, and I realize
Yeah.
that, but is this something if they come back, because that maybe we're going to, say, the school, say, Parkland, is this something maybe they can listen to themselves?
I don't think that'd be much interest to youth, to be
I
quite
don't
honest
know, I
with
just
you.
wondered
So,
that.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, I was just getting sorted out what that
Yeah.
was, and it's transporting people who have medical high needs either to the bus to go into Edmonton or to transport
Oh, that's
that
what
kind of
Yeah.
amount. So it's more
I thought
for
it was
like,
the other way.
I guess
Yeah.
retired people or people
Yeah.
with some time to
Yeah.
do that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the attached correspondence for information? Councillor Chouinard will make that
Okay,
motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the information.
Go ahead,
I just
Councillor
have a
Wilkinson.
question. What letter did we send to them first? It says, thank you for your letter regarding community social service programs initiatives.
Yeah, so through to Councillor Wilkinson, I believe this was back in December, possibly January. We sent a letter to the minister following a conversation that happened at AUMA about Edson and some of the things that we were doing. That letter was sent to all of council. That was a while ago though. Just outlining all the different initiatives that we were working on and asking for funding for homelessness in our community as
I
well.
do remember that letter. That
Yes.
was what the focus was on, because this sort of focuses on quite a few things.
Yeah. So this was a kind of a overarching letter about what we're doing in FCSS and community services. And I'm happy to provide a letter to the media as well, so you can see the original one. And basically, this is just a recap of all the things that the government thinks that they're doing well and where we're doing well.
Well, I
And-
see you talk about the FCSS funding increase, but I mean, it was 2015, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we still have not heard about the FCS or the grant for the Friendship Center at this point. So,
That's too bad, yeah.
so we'll see what happens after the election.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council fund $136,000 from the infrastructure reserve towards the 2018 landfill reclamation to cover future liability from the current landfill fire?
I'm gonna excuse myself as usual.
Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Councillor Chenard declares a conflict of interest due to his interests with his business, his employer, I should say. Go ahead, Ms. Bittner.
I'm back. This was, I believe, spoken about at length at the meeting last week, the update on the landfill fire. We just need to go and actually do a motion for the funding of that extra $136,000 that's needed for the reclamation. Due to the fact with the fire, we're actually reclaiming that portion of the landfill a few years earlier than we had anticipated. And part of PSAB is actually having those liabilities put aside ready to be done. So because we'll be closing that in 19, we need the liability for that reclamation to be in the books at 2018. So to do that, we need to fund this 136. We are suggesting from the infrastructure reserve. We'll move over to that liability account, and then that should give us enough money based on the estimate that we have at this time to pay for the reclamation of that part of the landfill.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Byer.
Through the chair to Mr. Behavior. What was the date that we were, if the landfill fire didn't happen, what was the expected date of closure on it?
Go ahead, Mr. Ray.
Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Byer. It's a bit of a moving figure, but our estimates at this time had been that this cell would have been spent in about 6 years. So we'd be looking at developing another area within our landfill structure within a 6-year period. The location where we're looking at building a new cell does not extend to the south as had been our previous proposal, closer towards the musky and wetter lands. Instead, we're looking at reopening an area to the north so we're not dealing with the wetlands related issues. So in fact, we're actually reutilizing an area that we otherwise didn't necessarily plan on using. That again is subject to approval by the provincial government. So we are working on the requirements to apply for that expansion. So right now it's just dealing with the closure.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Ms. Stewart.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, did anyone make the motion yet? Just before we call
Councillor
the question?
Bevan.
Yeah, Councillor Bevan.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions or comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Ms. Bittner. Trucking along here tonight. Moving on to council committee reports, and this week we will start with Councillor Wilkinson.
Didn't mean I should have to make the point, so I hope it's not too far back, sorry. It's me.
We're going back to March 19th.
Okay, good. March 20th and 28th, I had parked on large site meetings. And March 25th, the joint council meeting. And that's it for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Sorensen.
Yeah, I only had the joint council meeting on March 25th. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Byer.
Okay. So on Wednesday, March 20th, I had an Edson Library Board meeting, and we had our draft 2018 financial audits presented to us by the accountants. So that was really nice for the board to be able to ask questions on all those details. And we did end up with an unexpected small surplus that came from a few different items. So we could go through that. And we also had our AGM, but we postponed it because there were a few members away, like on holidays and stuff. So we'll kind of finish that off in April. And then on Tuesday, April 2nd, today, I had another library board meeting joint with the Yellowhead County Library Board in Wildwood, and we were able to kind of have a conversation and collaborate on ideas and look at ways that we can work together. As some areas, you know, we could do that. So
All right.
that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Byer. Councillor Chouinard.
March 25th, the joint and committee of the whole on the 26th.
All right. Councillor Curry.
I had the chamber AGM on March 20th, and they have, I think, almost all brand new executive, except for Sandy, who stayed on as the secretary. So that's really exciting for them. I had the Edson District Historical Society on the 21st, and just kind of a few things to share with you guys. What May is going good for fundraising. So they already have 6,000 in community just from donations, and then they have. Sorry, I was trying to find the actual numbers. So they have 6,000, but then they also have an in on a bigger charity thing where they were looking to get about 10,000 out of that one. And then just a few other grants that they're looking at too. So that's exciting. They're well on their way. And we have seen the script. We got to see the draft of the play, but we've seen the script. It's going to be so good. So good. Everybody's going to have to come and see it. It is really entertaining. And then just the joint council meeting on the 25th.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Curry. And I believe most members of council attended that AGM with you as well.
Yes, they did.
All right. Councillor Bevan.
March 25th, joint council meeting. That is my report.
All right. March 25th, joint council meeting with Yellowhead County. I thought we had some really good discussion about working together on a number of things. Committee of the Whole on the 26th. From the 27th to the 28th, CEO Derricott and I attended the Municipal Leaders Caucus hosted by AUMA. We had representatives from a number of the political parties talking about the election. One session focused on municipal issues. The main issues for AUMA and municipalities this election campaign are infrastructure funding. MSI is coming to an end, and we are lobbying hard to get a new funding agreement in place. The City of Edmonton and the City of Calgary have the big city charter that was signed before the election. They were pretty close on getting a new MSI deal signed right up until the writ dropped. So it was a little disappointing there, but a number of parties spoke about that. We also are focused on police resources, funding, the need for additional officers in Alberta, and the crime challenges that are facing our communities, and lobbying for additional funding to deal with cannabis. For those that are not aware, the federal government increased funding to provinces for the cannabis legislation that they instituted. That money was supposed to flow through directly to municipalities. That has not happened in Alberta, where the province is actually holding back some funds, and municipalities are very upset about that. It's not such a big issue for communities such as ours, but in cities and larger communities where they have a lot more issues to deal with, it certainly is a bite out of their budgets to deal with something that they had no control over. So, and then we had a political panel with Emma Grainley from the Edmonton Journal. We also had Ryan Jesperson from CHED, and Graham Thompson talked about the election campaign, and one of the predictions was a UCP majority with 72 seats, at which point everybody in the room gasped. So it's interesting, but the question came up about minority governments. They didn't think it was possible, but now we're seeing polls that show it might actually happen. So the next 15 days should be very interesting, and we do have a forum in Edson tomorrow night, so I encourage everybody to attend that and ask the candidates questions. The CAO and I also went for a dinner hosted by White Court with the mayors of Hinton, Rocky Mountain House, ourselves, and White Court, and we talked about some regional initiatives in particular. I know Councillor Barr will be excited about this, a Regional Economic Development Association. We used to have one years ago. Right now, we're the only area of the province that doesn't have one. So a number of us are very keen on reforming that and be a slightly different looking region, but focused on communities that are really involved in the resource sector. So look forward to further information on that, and I believe administration will be bringing a report back to council to discuss at a future date. So, and that's my report.
Can I add something? I'm sorry, because there was something really cool that I did want to share and I just couldn't find it in my papers. The Gallery Museum is going to be hosting local tourism training, familiarization sessions for any frontline staff in Edson. Really trying to encourage the hotel staff, kind of those frontline staff that are the first people that see our tourists, and giving them a tour of the museum, and then maps and trails and things that are going on. And then they're actually doing one at the museum, and then another session where they'll go tour the west side of Yellowhead County, and then when they'll go to the east side. And the idea being that frontline staff in Edson can be also experts at providing advice on what's available for our tourists. So if anybody's looking, it is May 3rd, 5th, and 11th, and really trying to encourage those frontline staff to take that information to help build our tourists.
That's awesome, and kind of ties into strategic priorities for this council.
Well, in my conference that I'm going to tomorrow, I'm going to a starting tourism from the ground up tomorrow morning at EDA, so I'll let you guys know.
All right. Councillor Bevan and then Councillor Sharp.
I have to say that Mayor Michaels looks good in red.
He does.
You had a question?
Just a comment from our Councillor Byers' comment. I'm pleased the library board, because they've talked about for many years involving the county, so I was very pleased that it's now happening. Just a comment.
Any otillother questions? Councillor Wilkinson.
Well, just a comment, I'm really glad that you're forming that coalition with the other mayors. Like, good ideas. I saw on Mary Ann's website about all the volunteers in the community getting free Timmies, and I thought, what a good idea. You know, we host the town volunteers, but there's lots of other volunteers in town too. Yeah, so you can always pick up good ideas from each other.
And that's what it's all about. And talking about how we can support one another. So. Further to Councillor Bevan's point, those that are not aware, we had a challenge this weekend, Wildcats versus Arrows. Arrows won, so Mayor Michaels had to wear Arrows jersey to the council meeting today. So he's representing Edson well.
Yes. Photographs online?
Yeah, there's video online.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. All right, question. We have no financial questions from media and public regarding items from this council meeting. Mr. Moore.
I had two questions. First of all, the unrestricted surplus, is there any other way we can top that up, say by infrastructure projects that don't cost as much as expected? Can those be transferred over, possibly?
Yeah, so that would happen at the next budget cycle. That's what typically happens. So there's always that opportunity. Sometimes projects don't go ahead because the tenders come in over budget or what have you. But we also have things that come up unexpectedly as well. So there's always that option. We always have options to move reserve funds as well. So, yeah.
Okay. And another question on a different topic. The landfill, is the fire out?
I'll turn that over to Mr. Verhage, who's very well versed. I'd probably spend more time at the landfill in the last 3 months than the rest of his life. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've completed the emergency capping operations. We've got a 2-week period now with absolutely no breakthroughs. We've completed the emergency trenching that we felt needed to be done based on the engineering reports we've received along the western side, so that we're making sure we're not migrating into the muskeg. So we've put down several meters deep, a couple meters wide, wall of clay to intercept any movement under the ground. So we're confident that we've got it under control right now. In fact, we're preparing the RFP, so we still have work to complete the work as required for the closure. But that can be done by RFP, and pretty soon here we'll be doing bids and seeking competitive rates for the rest of the work. So hopefully, if anything, it'll come under the anticipated budget, but
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any more questions.
No questions?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody else?
With regard to the dump, can it be used at all, or is it still closed?
Go ahead, Mr. Reagan.
Mr. Chairman, through to you, sir. Our landfill is technically being operated as a Class 3 transfer site. So we still have the ability to accept all the materials we typically did. However, what is definitely unable for us to take over are very large loads of otherwise dry fill materials. So although someone might be able to bring a demolished shed or some wood from their yard or a mattress or a couch, for us to take entire demolitions of buildings, facilities, or any large programs, such as we had typically wanted to run our spring cleanup program. At this time, we don't really have the capacity to take that without spending significant dollars in hauling it to another facility like Hinton. So at this time, our capacity is definitely diminished, but we do have the ability to receive materials. So it's just, if you're a more commercial-oriented user, we can't provide the service that we used to.
We just have to get by CNR to get in to see you then.
All right, thank you. All right, we will move on. We have no closed meeting items, so I will call the question. May I please get a motion for adjournment? That would be Councillor Chenard. Non-debatable. All those in favor? Motion carried. And now we give Councillor Curry the bumps.
Yeah.
So your birthday is today?
Yeah.